We're almost ready to code, but before we do, let's talk about some recommendations for system settings that will help make things easier as you get into the coding phase of the class. In this video, we're going to talk about what you need to do to code HTML and CSS on a PC. It's actually pretty straightforward. The only things you need are a plain text editor. I recommend Notepad. This is a default program that's installed on every single PC that exists, and we'll take a look at that in a little bit. And a browser. My recommendation for that is Chrome. It's compact, it works well with the latest HTML. You can use other things, Safari, Firefox, something like that. The one thing I do not recommend is Internet Explorer. It's just an outdated browser and it doesn't support all of HTML5. So just steer clear of that one for sure. So before I actually show you how to set up these two programs in a way that's going to facilitate your coding, let's talk a little bit about system settings. So first of all, just in case you want to switch your default browser to Chrome if it's not set at that already, I wanted to show you how to set your default browser. I'm going to show you how to do these settings on a Windows 10 setup, and also I can show you the control panel view as well. So I'll show that also. That may help you if you're using an operating system a little bit earlier than Windows 10. Okay, so in Windows 10, you would come to the Start icon and go to Settings, and that's going to bring you to this area. And the easiest way, I mean, I'll be honest, I have a hard time keeping track of where things are categorized under the Windows settings area, so I usually just use the search bar. And if you just go ahead and type in enough of default that it brings up some options for you. Choosing a default for each type of file will work. Choose a default web browser will work. Either one of those. Go ahead and click on that. And then you'll see it brings up your default apps area, and you want to come down here to browser. And if it's set at something else, right? Like I said, don't use Internet Explorer, but any of the other ones of these should work. I haven't tested out Edge a ton, but definitely Firefox or Chrome should be okay. And then you would go ahead and just select the one that you want, and then you're good. You can just close out that window. Now, the other thing that we want to take a look at is turning on file extensions. And this really is kind of important because as we code, we need to make .html files and eventually .css files. And so we have to be able to see those extensions and make sure that we're making the correct sort of file, because that's one really simple thing that right at the outset could trip us up if we don't do it. So let's go ahead and turn on those file extensions. So if you've never done this before, you probably will need to do it because by default, Windows has the file extensions turned off. Okay, so just like before, you're going to come here, you're going to go to the settings. This time though, you want file extensions, and again, just type up enough of it till you get the option that you're looking for, show file extensions, and that's going to bring up this area. Now, it doesn't immediately seem obvious where you need to go. You need to go down here to show settings, and then it's going to bring up this file explorer options window. And what you're looking for is this option here, hide extensions for known file types. By default, that is checked off. So I've done this before, obviously, so mine was already unchecked, but by default, yours would be checked off. You want to uncheck that because you don't want the extensions to be hidden. You'll say apply and then okay, and then you are good to go. Now, let me just show you those two things again, the default browser and file extensions. But this time I'll show it to you through the control panel view, just in case you've got a little bit older system. You can see it from that standpoint as well. So this is your good old control panel. And then you just want to go to these two places. So one is default programs, just like we talked about, and we want to set default programs. And it's going to bring you, so it might look a little bit different at this point because now it's going to interface with my Windows 10. But then same deal here where you'd go to the Google Chrome, and it would look a little bit different, but it would be the exact same idea. You'd want to look for the web browser option and just make sure that that's set to Chrome if that's the one you want to use. And then on the other hand, if you're on your control panel items here and it looks something like this, you would want to go to the File Explorer options. And that brings up this guy. And if you switch it over to the View tab, then you get to this same exact window that we were at before, where you want to make sure that this checkbox is unchecked so that you can see the file extensions. So that would be if you're using like a Windows 7, at least for the most part. The view might be a little bit different at certain steps, but that gives you the idea from there as well. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to cover here is how you want to set up your screen to get ready to code. So I'm going to talk through the steps, then I will show you exactly how to set it up so you get a visual as well. So first of all, you want to open up Notepad. You're going to save the file. You're going to save it as an HTML file. So, you'll navigate to where you want to store the file. If for, just the purposes of right now, you want to put it on the desktop so you can find it, that's fine. But I'm really going to encourage you to have a dedicated folder to your HTML work so that you can start to organize. Because eventually, once we get into websites in the intermediate class, it really is important to think about the structure of the site. So, create a folder, and then we'll have subfolders eventually. But go to that place where you're going to store the files, use that .html extension. Then you're going to keep Notepad open, and then you're going to open up the File Explorer. You'll go find where you stored the file, and then you should see it. It's going to have a browser icon for it now because it's a web file. You'll double click on the file name and launch it in the browser. Okay, so those are the steps. Let's go ahead and do it. Go ahead to your start button. I have mine pinned here because I use it a lot. If you don't, you can just type in to the search bar and you will find Notepad. This is the little icon for it. Go ahead and click on that. It's going to open up a new file. Now, for the moment, we're not going to put anything in there right now. The next video, we'll talk about starting your first web page. But just go ahead and go to the Save As. And again, I'm just going to throw this one on the desktop for the sake of convenience. We're going to call it page01.html, and that's the really important part, the .html. Now it's prompting you to do a .txt. Just ignore that. Don't even worry about it. It's not going to hurt anything. And just go ahead and hit save. And you notice that it pops up here. And when it pops up here, it has a Chrome icon because it is a web page. It recognizes it as a web page because of that file extension. So then our typical setup is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and just open this. And notice you've got webpage01.html, and that's the exact name of this file. So that's the same thing that's going on over there. Okay, and the typical setup that I'm going to recommend for you is to have your coding on one side of the screen and your browser on the other side of the screen, so that as you code, you actually can watch it refresh over on the other side. So it doesn't look like anything right now because we're not coding quite yet, but this is the setup that I'll recommend. That's pretty much what you need to know about your system settings and just getting your system tuned up, and now you're ready to code.